Everyone, welcome once more to this slide, the overview of PCI DSS validation approaches, right? There are two main methods. First, we have the defined approach as well as a customized approach, while compensating control is part of the defined approach. But each time I talk of the defined approach, what does it mean? And these are the methods that we're going to use to be able to assess or assess organizations system or assets, right? To make sure that they are in PCI DSS compliant. But what's the purpose or the goal here? First, these approaches offer flexibility in meeting PCI DSS requirements while also addresses unique security needs. And the goal here is that organizations should select the most suitable approach based on their existing controls, security needs, as well as compliance goals, right? Let's understand the defined approach. Defined approach, this is a traditional method for implementing and validating PCI DSS. The entity implements security controls exactly as stated in PCI DSS. You see, PCI DSS have their standards, have their requirements, so that entity, the organization, followed that guideline, that standard, that requirement, to implement their security control. So you definitely follow the blueprint or figure or whatever that PCI DSS have put together to be able to implement the controls. And it says that, and the assessor also follow predefined testing procedure to verify compliance. So it's not only about the organization following that, but the assessor, we're going to define then the QSA, qualified security control assessor, certified by PCI DSS, will have to follow the predefined approach, also method to verify compliance, right? Say, for example, if PCI DSS specify vulnerability scanning requirement, the entity performs quarterly scan and the assessor validate the result against predefined testing procedure, right? What are some of the benefits of the defined approach? First, clear and structured. It first of all provide a clear guidance for entities to follow PCI DSS exactly as outlined in the standard. Do you see? Clear and defined structure. And to me, that is easy. But what happened when in a situation where organization had already implemented theirs before even thinking of, becoming PCI DSS compliance, we're going to see that shortly, okay? ID also for organization with standardized controls already in place. Entities that are new to PCI DSS or information security seeking, you see, if you are new, then it's advisable for you to go with this, or they already have standardized controls in place, right? I'm loving this training. Now let's talking about compensatory controls in the defined approach. Each time you hear the word compensate, you mean like alternative. I will compensate for this. Oh, sorry, I couldn't make it, I couldn't make it for your occasion, but I will compensate, right? So I'm looking for an alternative. The fact that I was not able to make it, but I'll compensate for that. But in the world of cybersecurity and controls, what does it mean? Compensating controls are alternative measures implemented when the entity cannot meet PCI DSS requirement due to technical business or constraint. In a nutshell, when that entity cannot implement the best control, right? By now, if you've watched the GRC videos or playlists, you really understand what I'm talking about, right? So at this point, you want to go with a compensating control. But what are the goals? These controls must mitigate the risks of not meeting the original requirement. That's why I say baseline, right? Baseline, that's the minimum requirement that PCI DSS have put. But if the entity cannot meet it, then they can as well go in with a compensatory control. Still maintain the overall security posture required by PCI DSS. For example, a company cannot implement multi-factor authentication or MFA for all systems due to system constraints. As a compensatory control, they might implement additional monitoring and logging to maintain or mitigate the risk of unauthorized access. Due to business constraints, maybe they cannot enable or implement MFA, but for them to compensate for that is a fact that they will go in with more additional monitoring and logging, just again to prevent unauthorized access. And also documentation and validation. Annually documented compensating controls must be reviewed. Annually documented compensating controls must be reviewed by the assessor and included in the report of compliance work submission. And as a matter of fact, if you all go to the PCI DSS website, I did share with my students, when you go to the resources, I think resources, that you should be able to see all the different documents. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. I'll just pull it from my other slide that you guys can see. Right, so this is it. So this is something that if you just go here, you go to resources, do you see, you can even download the template right here. This is the actual document, and then summary changes from form 4 to 4.2.01. So this is some of the things that if you all think, I don't think there are any organization that still have 4, but still that's something that you want to know, of course, that you can definitely go there and read it yourself. But do you see, for example, you have the rock template. You can take this template and then try, even with the help of ChatGPT, to see how you can come up with material based on this template, and that will give you a good visualization on how it plays in the real world. You see, you also have rock template summary changes, extra compensating control worksheet, supplemental rock template, digital entities, and all of these, right? PCI DSS, attestation of compliance merchants, service providers, and so on. So you can definitely download some of these documents, just take a look, read it, and then, yeah, that will help you, right? Yeah. And then, for example, say that a company is unable to implement mandatory encryption due to legacy hardware constraint, legacy old system that the vendor don't any longer support, right? And each time you have those systems, there's no guarantee because the vendor does no longer support such system. And that's why I said a company could implement additional network monitoring or data masking. You mask the data to mitigate the risks of unencrypted data. Validation, the assessor will definitely review these compensatory controls to ensure they are effectively reducing the risks and also aligned with PCI DSS objectives. So that's something you guys will definitely want to learn. You might work organization where you guys, maybe you cannot do that. You do not have the defined approach or the baseline control. You have to go with compensating control. So now I hope you all are able to relate, right? Then we have customized approach. Customized approach focuses on the objective of PCI DSS requirement rather than the exact method specified in the standards. Okay. Entities implement their own controls to meet the security objectives, and the assessor derives testing procedure based on the entity unique security solution. For example, instead of using a standard intrusion detection IDS, we already know. If you don't know what IDS is, stop, go to the networking playlist and watch all the videos. An entity might deploy a machine learning based anomaly detection system that meets the objective of intrusion or identifying intrusions. And each time they do so, the PCI DSS qualified control assessor will still be able to review to make sure it meets PCI DSS requirements. Flexibility, right, allows organizations to implement innovative. So we also have the benefit of customized approach. It allows organizations to implement innovative solutions that meet PCI DSS objective, and it also provides greater flexibility in security practices. For example, an entity could also use behavioral analysis for fraud detection instead of traditional method like role-based detection system. But this is also ideal for risk mature entities with robust risk management practices that are comfortable implementing custom security solutions. Okay. And this gives us the differences between defined as well as customized approaches. It says the first one is that it follows PCI DSS requirement as stated in the standards, implement control to meet PCI DSS objective, not strictly following exact word by word, okay? More flexibility. Testing procedure, use predefined PCI DSS testing procedure, but Assessor-derived custom testing procedure based on the entity implementation. This is less flexible but more structured. Why this is highly flexible, allow innovation, of course, in security practices, and ideal for entities with standardized processes, while for risk mature entities with advanced security system. Then mixing define and customized approach, what does it mean? Have a blend, a mixture of define and customized approaches. It says organization can use both approaches within their environment. For example, an entity might use the defined approach for network security and the customized approach for data protection or other specialized area. An organization uses a defined approach for firewall configuration, but the customized approach for data encryption using its own proprietary methods. You see, so that makes sense. So, but what's the takeaways? Defined approach is best entity with a standardized security controls that follow PCI DSS requirement exactly. Compensating controls are flexible for those who cannot fully meet PCI DSS requirement due to a constraint as long as they meet the security objectives. Customized approach is ideal for innovative organizations that want to implement custom security practices while ensuring they meet PCI DSS objectives. So recommendation for you, if you want to help your organization, choose the approach that best benefits your environment, whether it follows or is following predefined procedure or implementing more flexible, customized security controls. All right, then the next slide, we will be talking about artifacts. As of now, I believe we all know what artifacts are. We'll talk a lot about artifacts. We went through our RMA training. But in the concept of PCI DSS, let's delve into this concept. I'll see you on the next video. And do not forget to like, share, subscribe, and also comment on this video. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.